Welcome to the Seikird Healing Podcast, where the old is new, the ancient is innovative, and the forgotten is remembered. We believe that sacred healing is your birthright. Join us on each episode as we uniquely, authentically, and mystically dive into the bold and vulnerable life of many magical humans. From breath, spirituality, shadow work, and all things in the esoteric realm of healing, we don't leave any stone unturned on this bold journey of growth as we start to explore the remembrance of what it means to be human. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and let's get sacred.
Hey, sacred humans, welcome to the podcast. Today I am chatting with a beautiful singer and songwriter, Amanda Hughey. She is a beautiful songstress and her music is absolutely transcendent. I'm so excited for you guys to get to know a little bit more about her, from her personal life experience to ceremonies that she's been through and pearls and lessons that she's learned along the way. Enjoy this episode with Amanda. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Seikird Healing Podcast. Today we have Amanda Hughey with us, who is a singer-songwriter. She tours nationally, and her music can be found on all platforms, and we're going to talk about that today. But I had this complete list of things to talk to Amanda about, and then she sent me over her bio, and I was like, whoa, skirt. Okay, I'm going to go a completely different direction. So we'll get to all the things, but one thing that I wanted to start with, just to kind of set the stage and paint the picture for everyone, is your background and your upbringing. Because I didn't know this, because we don't actually know each other that well, and we'll get to know each other today, which I'm super pumped about. But you had a really intense religious experience and upbringing. And in your bio, I read that you actually went through conversion therapy and came out the other side, which I would love to talk to you about, just to kind of set the stage for people in what your childhood was like, and then what inspired you to create art now in your life. So I would love you to dive into that, if it's not too personal and if you don't mind, because I think it would really help a lot of people that might be struggling with something similar.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything in my life that's too personal anymore at this point. So I grew up in a pretty, very evangelical home, single mom in Southern California. I went to a private Christian school, K through 12, and then started going on mission trips in high school, and really I was a worship leader at my high school, and always have been a big seeker, I guess. And my relationship with God was always really important to me, but it was always so based in this traditional religious sense, and very fundamental Christianity. And so after that's just kind of the little nutshell, so we can get into the conversion therapy stuff and then everything else. Right after high school, I left and went to a ministry in Texas called Teen Mania Ministries, and it was very, very intense. I lovingly and jokingly call it my first cult, and very intense. Went through a lot of stuff there, lots of dogmatic teaching, and that was where I was a worship leader there, and was really just moving through my faith, and didn't really have any idea cognitively of same-sex attraction, as they call it in the church. Now looking back, I'm oh yeah, my whole life this has been something. But when I was there, I stayed as an intern, and then got asked to stay a second year as a graduate intern. It was kind of like a mentor. And my graduate year, I ended up getting into a relationship with another intern, that I had no idea what was really going on. As far as, I thought we were just like really close friends. I was like, oh man, I've never had a friend like this before. And like, want to be with her all the time, all these things. And then something physical ended up happening between us. And I was just like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, what just happened? Because like the concept of being gay at all was just like not anywhere on my radar. It was just like an impossibility of something that could be for my life. And so when this situation happened, so we signed an honor code. When we get there, there's like no relationships allowed to happen, especially not anything same sex. And so, but we were like, committed to this honor code. And so I was like, had to go through this whole confession process, and did that, like basically knew I was going to get kicked out, but still knew it was like the right thing to do to confess what had happened. And so I had to go through this whole honor council process of like sitting amongst like a group of peers. I had to like in detail write out in like essay form what exactly had happened between me and this girl, and then sit there and like read it out loud to them, and then basically have them staring at me, and then I got kicked out. And so, but in the getting kicked out, it was under the guise of like, they would give us like a growth plan of like, okay, so you're extremely emotionally codependent. And because of your codependency, you moved into a physical relationship with this person because of the brokenness of your friendship, basically. And so that got imprinted in my mind. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm really codependent. Like I'm really messed up like that. I can't believe that. And like, I definitely don't want this to be my life. I don't want to be gay. I don't know what's happening here. So another friend of mine had graduated and left IHOP Kansas City International House of Prayer, was something that was kind of like a lot of people that were at Teen Mania had a big affinity to like go to IHOP because of it was just another ministry, and kind of like the next level of extreme of like intense and reckless abandon for God. Like your only job is to like be in the prayer room. And as a musician, and my whole path was basically like I knew that I was going to be a worship leader and like move up the ladder and like sing all over the world and bring people to God and write songs like that. And so when I had heard the music that was coming out of IHOP KC, I'll never forget it. There's a singer there. Her name was Misty Edwards. And I heard her music. I was just like dead stopped in my tracks. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. Like I want to play music just like Misty. And so I had a friend who had left Teen Mania and gone to IHOP KC specifically to be involved in their conversion therapy program. So it was basically just this lifeline of hope of like, come to Kansas City, get involved with IHOP, and pray away the gay. And so I left. Like when I got kicked out, it was like my whole world got flipped upside down because I was totally planning on staying and moving my way up in the ministry that I was at. And then moving to IHOP, I joined their Fire in the Night program, which is basically like midnight to 6 a.m. You're in the prayer room, and the whole system there is like set up. Their worship is called a harp and bowl, and it's like very interactive and intuitive and spontaneous, and the music goes 24/7. It never stops in this prayer room. And so you have people that are there as interns and staff as like intercessory missionaries. And so I got into Fire in the Night, the nighttime internship, and was in the prayer room like 36 hours a week. It was like a full-time job that you're just in there studying and praying. And then eventually I auditioned and then was able to be on a worship team. And then my second track is kind of not usual, but I got asked to join one of the worship teams. And so I felt really honored. And so I was singing at the play. I was like, I made it. and when it comes to like very like really charismatic and evangelical worship, that IHOP was one of like the Mecca. It was like the place to go to do that. So I was like, oh, I've made it. And started Living Waters, which was the name of their conversion therapy program. And I was like, oh, everything's fine. I'm going to get the gayness gone and like live my life as this epic worship leader. So I started doing the program, and it basically, so conversion therapy in itself is, so you can come in all forms. There's like the lighter form, I guess, even though none of that shit's light. The lighter form, what I did was like weekly meetings. It was like a 6-month program, weekly meetings, and we had this huge thick workbook and small groups, and you go in and you have a message, and it's all people that have basically walked through and like healed themselves from what you were doing. But it wasn't just for same-sex attraction in this program. The specific program I did, it was like basically for anybody who struggled with like the worst of the worst when it came to sin. So it was like I could have been sitting next to someone who like struggled with pedophilia or anything, and we were all lumped in together of like the things that like in the body of Christ most need healing and change. And so but then there are other forms that can be way more intense, that finally in Missouri and a lot of other states have been banned for anybody under 18, which thank God. But forms of where you can, as a teenager, your parents can sign you up to be like taken in the middle of the night into this camp, and you have no control. And then it's like basically a brainwashing situation of literally trying to like in all forms like exercise this demon of homosexuality basically. So so it was a lot of workbooks and talks about like if you can heal your mother wound and heal your father wound, and like the crux of it was something happened to you when in your formative years or in your life that broke you, basically. That's why you're gay. And so the power of God can come in and fix those broken parts, and then you can live a happy hetero life. And so basically at that point, my entire relationship with God was completely revolved around getting this out of my body of how do I be straight? How do I not have same-sex attraction? How do I move forward in my life and, be this worship leader and all of this stuff. And so it was really intense. I would sit in these small group circles and, you're going back through your whole life of like, okay, what's happened to me? What hasn't happened to me? Like I was a single mom. My mom and dad got divorced when I was really young, and, maybe that's it. And a lot of people are, like go through the fact of they've been abused or like sexually assaulted. And to me at that time, I was like, well, that's not my story. That's not what messed me up. And then later on in 2020, I actually had a repressed memory come up, but we can talk about that later. So, and that really threw me for a loop. I was like, oh no, maybe that's it. That is why. But so that was a whole situation in itself. But so we would sit in these small groups of women for me. And it was, we would just sit there and confess and talk about our attraction and what was going on. And then basically everybody would like lay hands on you and get in these really intense moments of prayer and like rebuking the spirit of lesbianism, like rebuking the spirit of homosexuality. And like, you have to like say all this shit out loud. And I just remember sitting there and like my whole body would just like tighten up of like, God, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to say this, but also everything in me was like, this is the only way that I can continue on and like have a relationship with God. This is the only way that I can serve Jesus. This, like, I can't live my life. I can't be in right standing with God with these feelings, with living my life this way. And so it was a big challenge and process to go through that. But something in me was always like, even though cognitively I wanted that because I wanted the life that I thought I was supposed to have, there was this part of me that was just like screaming, like, it doesn't have to be this, like rebuking parts within myself, or a part within myself that was okay. Like, it's like, it felt in some way of like, I rebuke the spirit of blue eyes. And I have blue eyes. Like, what am I going to do? It's a part of who I am, and a beautiful part of who I am. And so it was traumatizing, to say the least. And then going through that, there was a point where I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm free. I'm not gay anymore. And at that point, there was no way that I would have labeled myself that. Even, when anybody would talk about like the word lesbian, I was like, don't say that to me. Like so incredibly and inherently homophobic before I even realized that I, was homosexual. And it was just like a huge part in my life. And so right after the, Living Waters ended, it was me thinking like, okay, I'm cured. I'm doing really well. I'm singing on worship teams. I'm like, my relationship with the Lord is fantastic. And I'm on the path. I'm doing everything right. And then lo and behold, I see this woman again that I had this relationship with, and going through having that relationship cut off was the most painful thing in my life I'd experienced at that time. And I didn't even realize that it was so painful, because it was my first love, and it was being taken from me and being told that it was dirty and wrong and sinful and all of these things. And so inevitably I saw her again. And then once I saw her again, I was like, shit. Didn't work. This didn't work.
Hello, sacred humans. Quickly, I want to share with you something I've added into my daily rituals that has me buzzing, and that is Rise Mushroom Coffee. Rise entered my life through my Instagram algorithm that obviously knows what products I like, and I gave it a try, and just wow, it has amazingly delicious flavor. Not only this, they also have a mushroom matcha powder. Phew, mind blown. And they're filled with superfoods and super mushrooms. What I like about Rise is that they use 100% organic ingredients, and their mushroom farms are located in California. If you've always wanted to try mushroom coffee but haven't yet pulled the trigger, this is your moment. And there is zero risk because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're interested in the deliciousness of Rise mushroom elixirs, head to the show notes and you will find a link for 20% off your first order. Or simply use the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all caps, at checkout. And now, let's get back to our amazing episode of the Seikird Healing Podcast. Oh my gosh. Well, I have a few clarifying questions. So when you were when you went to the first ministry, I guess my first clarifying question is, what type of religion was this? Was it Catholic or Christian? I know they're all very, intertwined, but they also have differentiators. So I'm curious what religion this would fall under, what category it would fall under.
Yeah, it would fall under like Christianity, but a very like fundamental evangelical, like it was very charismatic, like kind of, like along the lines of Pentecostal, but they would use charismatic. So lots.
But you had to do confessions. I guess that's the only thing that was.
No, it was like just like confessing your sins in like the group. It wasn't like going to like priest or anything, or like in a Catholic situation. It was
got it. And
like
the other
confession, basically.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then the other clarifying question is, so when you were told not to have relationships, you had to sign this, statement saying you wouldn't have relationships. That was any relationship,
Yeah,
same sex, different sex, any relationship. And was that because you were, part of the, I guess, employment of the church or the ministry?
Yeah. So in Texas at Teen Mania, it was called the Honor Academy. And it's like, they like try to get you to go there right after high school. And it's like, you dedicate this year of your life to like learn how to be a leader and like take the gospel to people, and whatever your professional sect would be after that. It's just like this training ground for like little evangelical soldiers, I guess.
Got
Basically.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so I love that it's called IHOP too.
I
All
know.
I can think of is
Like,
pancakes.
I know. I'm always like, house of prayer, not pancakes, but
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that too. Um, so yeah, I mean, obviously very, very traumatic in terms of alienating you from parts of yourself that you've wanted to feel connected to so deeply, but really were those thoughts and feelings and emotions were being repressed, and not only repressed, but like trying to be replaced with something different. And so I can see how that would be very traumatic, and also so much so that like you had this repressed memory come back into play later on as well. Um, can you talk about that? Would you be willing to talk about that piece of it?
sure. One of the biggest things for me was really thinking of like, I didn't get broken at a young age. Like I didn't get abused. Like my life was crazy. There was a lot of, like abuse that I saw, and like on the physical and emotional and verbal side. But there was no like sexual trauma that I could remember or anything, and so I was like holding on to that piece of like, I didn't get broken that way. Like that's not what made me gay. And then in 2020, I had this repressed memory come up of something that happened when I'm not exactly sure of the age. I feel like it was maybe like between 5 and 6, but I can't specifically remember. Could have been a little younger, but where I had this kind of like dream-like memory that would hit me every once in a while, but it was just this one little piece. And the piece that I had, it would come up. I would talk to my therapist about it every once in a while, like every couple of years it would come up, and I would be like, I have this weird thought, but I don't really know if this happened or not. And of being at a house of a family that we went to church with, and there was an older boy that lived there, obviously with his parents. And this part of this memory that I had, my brother was in the room, and we were in a pool room, and I remembered like being around the pool table, and I was in this like pink puffer jacket. That's like something that I remember. And I remember him coming up behind me and basically like sliding his hands down the back of my pants. And I was like, could feel in my body, like, okay, I don't know what's happening. And I remember him like asking me if that felt good. And I just remember being scared, but also so young. And in the fact I said yes. And then that was like all I remembered. And so I was like, okay, well, even this memory it's not that bad, like, sure, it's not good, but people have, things all the time that are just exponentially worse than that. And so in 2020, I was in a 6-month period of, I was living in San Diego taking care of my grandma, and my mom and my brother had come up from the LA area to visit. And I was in the kitchen talking with my mom about something else, and I was talking about being confused about accessing this weird memory. And my brother was in the front room with my grandma. They were having another conversation. And I said something like, I don't know if this actually happened, but I was upstairs or like in the basement in the pool room. And I said the name of this family at their house, and all of a sudden my brother, like, his head just whips over, and he just like looks at me like from across the room, and he was like pointed at me, and he was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And so my jaw dropped and my whole body went chills, and I was like, okay. And then my mom was like, oh my gosh, and she said the name of the dad, and I was like, no, it was the son. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, did you know that the father actually got, like, they got kicked out of the church because the father got accused by the son's best friend of molesting him like their whole life. And so I was like, oh my gosh, no, it wasn't the father, it was like the son in the family. And so I was like, okay, brother, would you like to come outside and, you know, chat for a minute? And so we went outside and proceeded to talk about something that we had never spoken of, like 30 years later. And
How old was your brother at the time? Was he older
so
than
he's
you?
2 years older than me. So whatever in my, like,
Like
5 or 6 time rates, yeah, he might have been, 7 or 8.
Mhm.
And so I said that I told my piece of the memory, and then he was like, well, I don't remember that at all, but I remember this. And then so he then gave me the second half of the memory, which was basically, I don't remember him, touching you by the pool table, but what I remember is him taking your hand, walking you around the pool table, laying you down on the couch, and then laying down on top of you. And then he said that he was basically, he couldn't see exactly what was going on after that, because the pool table was in the way, and he just like dropped into freeze and, kind of dropped down and was rocking in the fetal position and just saying like, something really bad's happening to my sister. And so when he told me that, I was just like, what? Like, what? Like every part of my body went into this crazy mode of like, everything in me started to try and remember at that point, but then everything in me was like, don't you fucking dare remember that shit right now. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to know, because I was like, do you know specifically what happened? And he was like, I don't. But I just know that he was on top of you for a while, and who knows. But so that came up, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't even know how to process this. And then so this robbery basically happened to my brother and me in this moment. And then because after the fact, this got, this boy terrified my brother. My brother doesn't remember exactly what he said, but it was just along the lines to scare him enough of like, if you ever say anything, something, completely terrifying. And so neither one of us said anything. I have no idea how and we would go to this house all the time for different church things and whatever. And it's so crazy how your body and your mind can learn to protect you, and just help you try and deal with being alive with things that you aren't capable of processing. So
And how old was the boy? Like, how old was
he was like 7 years older, I think.
Okay.
Um,
But he had been abused as well, we assume, right? From just
yeah, I'm not sure, but you could only assume if,
Yeah.
his friend was, or he had at least seen or something, because typically that's the pattern, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you don't just inherently do things like that young necessarily, unless they're being done to you. So in that moment, I had a really hard time. I was angry with myself how much immediate compassion I had for this kid. I was like,
I mean, I even just had immediate compassion for all parties, because it's
yeah,
like I mean, he probably was only maybe 16, 17, or really younger, maybe 14. If he was about 7 years older than you, it's like he
yeah,
could have been a teenager, and like boys, teenagers, like they have so many urges, and like testosterone, they don't know what to do with all that either. And then that's what that person may have known as normal. So it's like you immediately go to compassion, and then you go to compassion for your brother who's like scared and doesn't know. And then obviously compassion for you, which is like, oh my gosh, like so young. And so everyone in this situation is a child, essentially.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I knew that I needed to have a moment of just like insane anger and, for my own self of like what was taken from me. And it was like, I was actually at the beginning of, I was working with a producer to write this one woman show that I've like always dreamed of writing. It's like comedy and monologue and this whole thing and like video basically of like the storyline of my life. It's like a 90-minute performance with just me and adding in all these elements of performance, and then an end cap of every scene would be a song to basically explain everything. And so I was meeting with this producer, was really excited about it. We were going to start writing the whole thing, and then all of a sudden I was just like, I can't do this. I don't even know like where I thought my life began. Like I knew I had a lot of trauma from other things and, like physical abuse in the family and just so many different things that was like, I couldn't even do it. I like got on a Zoom meeting with her and just cried. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I can't try. I haven't even processed this. I don't even know what happened. I just like shut down and just went into a really dark place and was trying to it just felt like in that moment like the whole world was different. It was like I was wearing these glasses and the world looked a certain way, and then all of a sudden these glasses were gone and like the whole world looked different. It's like such a weird thing to explain of what it felt like. And so I then had to reframe like my whole life basically of like my history and trauma and where all these things came from. And then one of the first things that came up for me was all the shit that I'd been told in conversion therapy of like sexual abuse, making you this way. And so I was like, even though I had been out of the church and deconstructed and for quite some time and was really confidently living my life, and fantastic reframe of my relationship with God and everything. And even in that moment, it was so ingrained in me, like that even in that moment, I was like, oh shit, maybe that is what happened. And then I had to work through the whole process of like, no, Amanda, like, it's okay. Like, yes, this happened to you. And yes, now reframes, some trauma that, for you to process and all of the things of your internal parts, what they actually went through. But that is not just something that we're like, nothing ruined you to make you gay. Like nothing broke you to make you quote unquote this way. Because who you are and how you love is beautiful. Like it is part of you. It is like celebrated by the Creator. It is not something that is broken in you, and you like no longer have to keep these old thought patterns of what broke you.
Yeah, I think it's really, well, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that, because I know that it's something that most likely took many years to get to a point where you can now converse about this. And so I appreciate the vulnerability and the authenticity and the transparency that's coming through. And I also think it will help a lot of people that have gone through something similar. And I have a few close friends that have gone through specific circumstances that sound similar, but they've not talked to a lot of people about it or been able to really process what those emotions are or what that is. And you mentioned earlier that you were previously homophobic before you knew that you were homosexual. And so what was there a moment when you said, oh, wow, like that's completely flipped? Or was it a series of moments? Like, how did you realize, oh my gosh, I'm homosexual, but I'm homophobic? Like, what is that? What is that feeling? Like, when was that moment, or was it a series of moments where you started to realize that that was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was so much of a series of moments. And I think it was um, kind of like after I was out of the church and moving on with my life. I mean, like there was a big point of where I was just like, fuck all of this. All of my friends like couldn't understand that because all of my friends were in the church and at IHOP and extreme religious setting. And um, so my leaving IHOP was like kind of a traumatic situation too. And so it was like, finally I had reconnected with the woman that I was with in Texas, and then she moved to Kansas City, and then I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna leave everything, and then kind of like my walking away from God, if you will. And so it was just like I left the church and then got a job at TGI Fridays, and then we were like girlfriends, and it was just like everybody I met, it was like boom, one day I was this way, one day I was like, okay, I'm living totally this way, I'm gay, all these things, but like I had no framework for anything. Like I didn't even realize how much even like the queer community that I was like afraid of. And it was, yeah, just after that point and kind of working my way back to like finding spirit and like working my relationship back in with God of like, wow, plant medicine and psychedelics were a huge entryway for me back to finding all of my spiritual love and finding my way back to God. And so I did ayahuasca, and I was like completely met and just blown away. And it was like the fabric of love in everything just like came down and literally apologized to me. Like, and it was an apology in the way of like, I'm sorry they lied to you about who I am, and it was this like like the entire cosmos were focused on me in one setting and just like pouring love into my body, and but sitting there as like my closest friend of like how I truly had my relationship with Jesus. And it was like in that moment, um it was an apology as if like God's heart was so broken of like, damn, they lied to you the whole time. Like, I have never not loved you. I have never not wanted you. Like, I'm so sorry that like they did this to us. It was like the grief of being lied about at the same time of being lied to. And it was so profound. And after that, it was like my whole world opened back up. I was like, the seeker in me was just like reignited. And I was just like, oh my God, like this is what everyone's searching for all the time, and it's not that you have to get to that place through, drinking ayahuasca, but it helps. There's so many other ways to get there, and breathwork and meditation and just like intense prayer. And it's lives within your chest. It's in every cell of your body. So however you find it, you'll find it. But it took something that extreme for me I think because of my life and my upbringing, and it needed to be something that was so big that rocked my DNA.
Yeah, because trauma release can really rock the DNA, can really change your DNA. And also the concept of integrating all of those shadows into, transcendence rather than trying to get rid of. It's like, no, that's a part of me, and I get to include it, and I also get to be this magnificent being, and spirit, God. I think I heard somebody call God Sky Daddy. And I was like, yeah, Sky Daddy. But like whatever you resonate with, that moment, that thing, that transcendent, that will love you no matter what. And so having those integrated parts of the shadow or the demon, or whatever you want to call it, can help integrate you into more deeper self-love, and kind of release some of that suppressed trauma. You mentioned plant medicines. I was called to talk to you because we had a special moment. You probably don't even know, but during a breathwork ceremony recently in Sedona, and I was helping to co-facilitate, and there was about 250 people there, huge amount of bodies, and I typically, when I'm facilitating breathwork, I really get called to specific people for very specific reasons. I'm not just, touching everyone, because in breathwork, sometimes you don't need to touch people, right? It's a lot of intuition and body work. And I was called to go over to you, and I had a really sweet moment with you. And I at the time, didn't know who you were, what you did for a living, that you were a singer. I had no idea who you were. It was literally just my body was called to your body to do some healing, and it was a really special moment. And only afterwards was I like, oh wow, who is this beautiful being and beautiful soul, and just had a really sweet moment with you, and so wanted to share that, but also was curious if anything came up for you in that breathwork or other breathworks that you've done, because it is such a healing modality. And also, like you mentioned, people don't always need to go, cut to drink a cup of ayahuasca to get the trauma release or the healing. And I think breathwork is a really, really lovely way to kind of get started on that path of healing yourself.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about that experience specifically, because it's when I first was introduced to your being, to your soul on this earth. And you were curled in a little, ball in fetal position, and you were there, and you were expressing and releasing in your own way. And I was over there. And then also one of our mutual facilitators, Kyle Kingsbury, came over, and he had his hands on you. I had my hands on you. It was this beautiful moment. I felt like there was a beam of sun shining down. It was and so, yeah. And at that time, I didn't know how talented you were, or who you were. I didn't know who you were. And so I felt really, really called to share that, because I felt like it was such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I don't know what was happening, but something was going on.
Yeah, something was going on for sure. That, and I 100% agree. Breath work is one of the most potent tools to use to move trauma, to connect, to really breathe in and feel all of your cells light up with love, with light, with everything, Wim Hof always says, get high on your own supply. Right. And so that specific breathwork session was really big for me. We had that activation session with Matthias, the day before, and
we were primed.
Yeah, primed. And for anyone who's unsure, of Matthias de Stefano was a speaker at the summit we were at, and he put us all through this beautiful exercise. It was a activation, basically, in a Merkaba, which is a sacred geometry shape, and just all in moving energy and healing. And in that activation, it rocked me, man. I was like, I don't know what happened. I still am not quite sure what happened, but I was vibrating. My lips were shaking. I had my hands up, in giving and receiving position, and I felt like I was in full Dragon Ball Z mode. I had like balls of light in my hand. I could feel the weight. I was seeing like pure white, like guides. My lips were like filled with electricity. It was like, I felt like it was like this key point activation for my life.
And we were also all using our voice to make notes too. And
Yeah.
as you know, as a musician, like music is one of those beautiful healing modalities that changes your body on a molecular level. And so we were like all humming and creating notes and harmonizing. And it was like a tuning fork
Yeah.
for, over, almost 200 people, right? So it's like we were all tuning to each other. It was such you're describing it and it's like, yeah, that was it. But like also like part of it is like indescribable. Like it's almost like you can't put it into words what actually happened in that ceremony.
But it was so beautiful, and I just felt like so filled with like every access point felt like I was touching it, of like when it comes to the divine. It was like I don't even know how to describe it, but it felt really big. And so for me this last year, I got sober this summer. I sat with ayahuasca again and done like so much work with that. I broke my leg in like 6 places and like had a tear in the summer and was like hit a really big rock bottom. I was just like, it was one of the lowest points of my life. Just like, going through 5th of whiskey by myself a day and just terrible to my friends. I was being terrible to the women I was dating. Like it was just this monstrous low for me. And then I had the opportunity to lost a friend to fentanyl. Like it was big stuff. And so had the opportunity to sit with ayahuasca again and made the decision to get sober. And after years of going back and forth and trying and always going back. And so that time it took, and it was, months of healing and working through and the process of leaving my best friend and leaving the repetition of like the darkest cycles and just a lot of healing this year. And so I had let go of so many things, and I felt like I was in this beautiful place in my life to where I was like, I truly don't feel like there's anything, because usually a lot of breath work is like moving trauma out, like, purging pain, or, a lot of breath work brings things like that up. And so for me, after that, thing that we did with Matthias, and then I was laying there in the breath work, and it was like, for the first time, it didn't feel like things were pulling out of me. Like it felt like I was finally this like clean vessel, that everything about it was like light pouring in. So it wasn't this thing of moving out this old trauma, moving out these things, because I've done so much work with that it was finally this beautiful moment. For the first time, it felt like that I was able to just say yes and be so confident in the receiving all of the pouring in of this light and power and energy and love. And like, so it was really overwhelming because it was coming really quickly, and it was really visual for me in like a form of like white light. And there was this point where, I was laying on my side, and I had my hands like almost like, if you can imagine like a beach ball in front of me, or like one of those big medicine balls, bouncy things that you sit on. It felt like that much light was like in front of me. And then I was moving my hands out and in, almost like an accordion. Like, and as my breath would come in, it was like, and when I would fill up, it was like it would pull in more light and make the ball bigger. And it was like this practice it felt like chi, and like pulling in, like I tangibly understood my power with the energy and with like the light and with moving it through my body and with my intention. And like I touched something of like a power source that I don't think that I had before, or that I had, but I hadn't touched it or realized it before. And so my breath, I remember my breathing was really kind of like shallow almost. It felt like this gasping because it was so big that it was like pressing down on my lungs. I was like, like it really felt like this gasp, but like I had to open myself up. It was like opening the solar plexus, opening my heart chakra, like as big as I could make my chest and as wheezy of a breath that I could pull in. It was just like pulling in, and like I physically at one point I could like rest my arm on this light because it was so dense and it was so big. It was like tangible. In fact, like I felt it in the 3D. And so with that, all of that pulling in, it was like it almost felt scary because it felt so powerful, and it was like the acknowledgement of some different things that I was able to access. And so with that, it was like I remember crying, and it was just like this insane gratitude. Like I was so thankful for everything that I had been through, everything that I had done, everything that I had tried. And like the first time that I sat with ayahuasca, this phrase kept going in my head. It was like, it's a lyric and something I wrote a long time ago, but after I had gotten the apology and moved through such beautiful visions and found myself laying in like the fabric of love, I was just like overwhelmed and weeping of like, thank you for making my heart brave. Like, thank you for making my heart so fucking brave that through everything that I've been through every trauma with the church, every lie, everything, it was like somehow my heart has always been brave enough to come back and to seek the truth and to find it for my damn self, because it's so, I can't live without it. And so it was just like feeling in that moment the gratitude of like my own bravery for like not stopping, not quitting, no matter what. And no matter what anyone has said to me, no matter how many people in my life think that I have gone off in some sort of like demonic path, with how I connect to God now. And it's just like, man, thank you. And thank you to myself. Like it's an us, right? It's like the God that's so big that's outside of you, but that same thing lives inside of you. And it's always a we. It's you never do anything outside of each other. And so it was like, thank you to this beauty outside of me, and thank you to this beauty inside of me for like, man, it has taken so much bravery to show up every time and to do the hard stuff and to work through it. And so I was just like overwhelmed in that moment of like feeling the gratitude and just like, thank you, I love you. Thank you, I love you. Like, thank you, I trust you in the biggest way, and like really feeling that in for myself and what I was going to do with music from there and like these new activations. And while we were in that breath work, Blue was she was there helping facilitate, and she sang one song live, and the song that she sang live, it was Oceans, which is an old Hillsong song, which Hillsong is like a church in Australia. And I used to sing Hillsong songs like it was my job, and so the song that she sang, Oceans, was like, I was absolutely floored. It felt like the biggest God nod in the whole world, because I was like, how on earth in this setting, in this moment in my life, when I'm thinking about all of my music being activated, how I want to be this almost like this worship leader in this new way now, and of like healing music and all the ways that I write now and what I want to perform and move people and help people heal and like bridge this gap of grief with the church. And how on earth is she singing this song right now? And it felt like just this biggest gift of like a full circle of like all the old stories, all the things, you know, that like creator is like the word that she used in that song, in the bridge, rather than savior. And something about that just spoke absolute volumes to me. And it was a song that I had sung in a worship leading setting so many times. And it was such a powerful song to me. Even when I would hear it afterwards, it just always never ceased to move me. And so in that moment of being filled with all of this stuff and like thanking myself for staying brave and knowing I want to move forward with worship, it was like the gift of this old worship song that I used to sing. And it was like this connection of a reminder of like, I've been doing this for a long time. And just because it was framed differently, like I was meeting God then, and I'm meeting God now. I was singing to love then, and I'm singing to love now. I'm singing about this same thing that I had always been connected with, that I had always been seeking so desperately. And so when that was the only song that she sang. And so it was so wild that, and I just like remember just like weeping of like, what a gift in that moment to hear that specific song. And then to like have all of this light be moving. And so I felt like it was just like this battery that just got ultra charged in that moment. And it was just like, I've never been more confident to move forward in my music. I've never been more confident to like move forward in my life and like my relationship with the divine and like what that looks like, and to love in these magnificent ways, you know?
Today, I want to share with you all the delicious cacao with a K drinking chocolate. Cacao is one of my favorite brands of ceremonial grade cacao and is a delicious addition to my morning routine. Cacao is jam-packed with delicious nutrients that work with my body to stay energized, connected, and focused. What I also love about cacao is that they are a nonprofit on a mission to protect the native heirloom strands of cacao in both Peru and Guatemala by giving back to the farmers and communities that make it available to us. If you are interested in cacao with a K, go to the show notes and you will find a link for 10% off your first order, or simply by using the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all capital letters, at checkout. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned she changed the word savior to creator, because that little reframe is the co-creation. It's the co-creation with yourself and the universe, rather than waiting for somebody to come save you. It's like, no, I'm here to heal myself. Yeah. And I'm brave and I have the power, and I don't need to, I can just derobe all these limiting beliefs and limiting stories, because I know that I can co-create and build, and it is brave. And you also mentioned something that like came in that reminded me of the Ho'oponopono, the traditional Hawaiian healing method, which plays at the end of every single podcast. It's music by Vailana. Check it out. It's the phrase, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you." And
that's the song that was playing in my first ayahuasca sit, where like my full apology came in.
Wow. Synchronicities.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the act of forgiving yourself and saying sorry to yourself. But also during that ceremony, you said that like co-creator came in and said, "I'm sorry too. Like, I'm sorry. And I love you." And that's where all that gratitude comes from. So we've kind of gone right into it, but I would love to expand on your lens of spirituality and the concept of duality in life, because we've kind of been dancing with it. Like we've been dancing with the creator, we've been dancing with the demons, right? So what is that? What has that meant for you in terms of self-healing, self-love, acceptance, gratitude? Like what has that expansion of the lens of spirituality and that concept of duality brought into your life? Because I don't think we're here, and I do want to make a disclaimer, like I'm not on this podcast trying to like bash any type of spirituality or anyone's beliefs, because I believe that we all can find our own way to connect and to create and to co-create with the universe, no matter what our beliefs are. And so this your specific experience, you mentioned like, oh, I was loving in this way and now I'm loving in this way, and it's the same love. And so I would love for you to expand upon that, like reframe of the lens of spirituality and the concept of duality in your life and how that's helped you heal yourself.
Yeah.
Easy question, Amanda.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful because I just keep thinking about like all of these song lyrics to things that I've been writing. But and I've been talking about this so much lately, and on, like the last couple podcasts I did too. The concept of duality is like, for me, there is no point to being alive without it. Like there is no point to being in human form without pain, without challenge, without trials. And it's just so interesting because like in the Christian tradition, it's framed for you in the fact of like Jesus and the devil, or God and the devil, right? Because the duality has to exist. And so in every ancient religious text, it's like there is a darkness, there is a light, and like the tribes talk about Watiko, of like being the like darkness, or like, kind of like what we would think of as like demonic type of forces. And as a Christian, there's such a harping on of like removing everything that's bad within you. Like the list of sin goes on and on and on. And so and the only way that you can get to God is to be without sin, right? And so then that's where you have Jesus coming in, the whole story of the crucifixion, like that one sacrifice being the thing that removed all sin for everybody forever, if you just believe in what Jesus did, and the power of the resurrection. And so there's something so intense with that of being brought up in that, of where your whole life revolves around eradicating darkness, and like what you're told is sin, even like, don't you dare touch your own body because it's sacred, and sacred means this in this way. And like, don't you dare be gay because this book says that it's wrong, which also we could go into a whole other podcast on that, the misinterpretations of anything that has to do with that, and in the 6, potentially 7 verses in the whole Bible that even say the word homosexuality. But that's a podcast for another day. And so growing up in this way of where it's like your whole relationship with God pretty much only revolves around like, make me better. How do I I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I did this. I'm bad. Like I did this bad thing, and now I need your forgiveness to make me good. And so this concepts of of good and bad and being named as good or bad based on your actions or based on what you do, rather than the understanding of what it is to just be and like exist and within all of your parts, and like understanding that everything about you has come from some place, either, you know, trauma or wounding or beautiful things in your life that have shaped your personality in this specific way, or, you know, looking at the stars and getting into the astrological point of, you know, like, I think that our souls signed up to be here. And so whatever that looks like, if it was a thing of where we decided that we were going to come here and forget what the point of us being here was. But the point of being here is just to be here. And I saw something recently that was like, I didn't come to teach you, I came to love you. And like, everything comes from that, right? And so it's like we get so bogged down with thinking that parts of us are bad and that we need to like exercise them and like pray them out of us, and that this thing that like somebody else doesn't like about my personality, but maybe I love this about my personality, that like I have to change that for them, or just any concept of something that you feel like traditionally you would need to like exercise out of your body, right? So I wrote this song right at like around when I was sitting with ayahuasca last, and it's just interesting what you were talking about, dancing with your demons, because it literally, and I was getting sober and all of this stuff, and it was like the first line of the song says, I want to shake hands with my demons and learn to dance without them. And but moving forward with that, it's like, but they're my oldest friends, that, you know, like they gave me my rhythm, right? Like everything that has been challenging or difficult in your life, you have to bow to that in a way of loving it and honoring it. And like, that's the only way through, right? Like I remember I heard Aubrey talk about that earlier this year, of like the only way through those moments, and like the only way of like getting through to the other side is like, you can't just exercise this shit out of your body. Like you have to look at it, you have to find a way to say I love you to it, and like that's the only way to alchemize it. And so getting yourself to a point of where you genuinely love the darkest parts of you, where you can look at them and say thank you. Like when I sat in that last ayahuasca setting, I was literally looking at my demons, quote unquote, and they were all taking different shapes and forms. And, you know, it was almost scary a little bit, but then there was this point where I was just filled with this love, to where I was like shouting at them in this internal voice, I love you. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. And like in that moment, I could really look at them and just be like, oh, fuck, you're beautiful. Like, I don't want to just rid you and rip you out of my life. You're in the fabric of my DNA. You helped make me who I am. If I didn't have you, I wouldn't be me. And so learning that dance of like there is no, like, without the night, there's no need for the sun, you know, like truly you will never understand the overwhelming beauty of love unless you haven't had it, or have been pained by overwhelming things that like of love. Like how boring would it be to incarnate, to come here and to just, everything goes your way, everything you think immediately, yep, that happens, yep, this happens, and like everything is just great all the time. And then like, sure, that would be really awesome for a little while, but it would be boring. You would have no idea like how good your life actually was, because it was just all good all the time. And so without that duality and like framing it in a place of, it's not a situation where it's like God lets good things happen to people and lets bad things happen to people. It's not, I don't think that it's that. I don't think that it is, when somebody dies randomly from a drunk driver and their family is distraught and they're sitting there, like questioning, and then you have a pastor say, well, this must have been God's will. It must have been like, God never would have allowed this to happen unless A, B, C, D, or whatever. Like, that is so traumatizing. That is so, and such a weight to put on the responsibility of God for saying that, like, that was the plan. That was God's plan to make this terrible, terrible thing happen to you and your family. And like, just because you needed to learn something like this, like, principle that was like, okay, you're doing this, so I'm going to give you the world's worst lesson because you should fear me.
Yeah,
Like,
it kind of creates shame upon like layers of shame
right.
upon each other. And I've been doing a lot of studying of Carl Jung's work and reading the Red Book, and it kind of reminds me of the quote that he says, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." And in the actually in the podcast, my logo on, if you go to Spotify, or if you see us on Spotify, the logo has that like flip side of the tree with the roots and the branches growing up, because it's the whole concept of duality, essentially the whole concept of, you don't get to feel your highest highs, you don't get to feel that full deep gratitude, you don't get to feel that light without feeling the same amount of darkness. And how can we explore those parts of ourselves without feeling that shame upon shame upon shame? And how can we really uncover those? So like what you're saying, that Aubrey Marcus was in his teachings is to say, okay, well, the only way out is through, and how can we alchemize those parts of ourselves so that we're not suppressing them, we're not pushing them down, we're not even trying to get rid of them, we're including them, and we're transcending them into the new version of ourselves.
Yeah. And there's something really like powerful too, that Matthias de Stephanos talks about in Initiation, his series on Gaia. It just completely blew me away the first time I heard him talk about this. And I'm not saying it verbatim, but he was just talking about like how we all in creation are like asking like, what are we here for? Why am I here? All these things. It's like, we're asking the wrong question. Like, so if you have God, or like the entire cosmos, the universe itself, in like the beginning of love, if God is so all-knowing, lacks nothing, needs nothing, wants for nothing, then, and has everything, so then you have that consciousness sitting there like asking itself, okay, well then what can I become? Like, if all of these things are true, then what could I become? Like, what is possible then for everything? And so then you have, from that question of like, what can I become? You have humanity, right? You have all of these souls branching out to come and have this human experience. And if we look at it from the lens of my only job being on this planet and being myself as a human is to find out the fullest potential of what God could become. Like, and the only way to do that is to be as absolutely insanely individual as you can, to be as fully yourself and like you as God living in you as you possibly can be. And so within that, within the what could I become, the potential for absolute terrible darkness is still there. That's why you have chaos and you have all these things. And it's like the capacity for light and dark are infinitely the same. And you have to come at it from a lens of like all is of or nothing is. You can't just look at something terribly dark and say that God is not in that, because somehow, some way, even though it's uncomfortable to think about, God is in everything. And so you have people that then come and it's like, what could I become? You could become someone who chooses to fall into infinite darkness and practice your life in a way that brings pain. Practice your life in a way that derails everything, that sucks energy, that sucks life source from other people, rather than being somebody who learns to use as much light to like walk in as much beauty as possible and to emanate energy to other people and to bring light and love into the world, you know? And so it's like learning to look at it from that lens of like, and sometimes shit just is. Like shit just is because it is, and it didn't happen that way because somebody, like some angry person in the sky was like, you deserve this terrible lesson. It's like, it's our job to make meaning out of everything that happens to us. It's not necessarily our job to place blame or to place intention on the things that happen. It's our job to figure out how to bring light to it after it's happened or while it's happened, right? And so it's like the only point is to figure out how to connect your whole being with that love that brought you here, and that the whole universe is cheering you on for you figuring out your life and just to exist and like know love and to bring it to other people and to figure out who you are. And then everything flows from that. Like as radically honest and as radically beautiful as you can live your life, it's like that then gives God the potential to see all of the possibilities of what God is.
Yeah, and it's so like timely that you're talking about this, because I've been studying the tablets of light, the emerald tablets, and essentially like one of the tablets is all about this unity consciousness, but also like vibrating in a uniqueness of your own frequency, because that's for the greater good. And yes, there can be this unity and this like consciousness that we all have to serve the greater whole, but then there's also the vibrancy and the radicalness of your uniqueness that you have to step into, or that you don't have to, but you can step into. You get the opportunity or the invitation, the permission slip to step into in order to vibrate on that higher level. And that doesn't mean anyone's like better or worse or anything like that. It just means like, hey, you have the opportunity to step into this piece of your full uniqueness. And when you do, oh my gosh, Sky Daddy opens up and gives you some gifts. And and it makes me think of again, you know, in the same vein, you know, we're talking about Matthias. He has the program, the Yo Soy program, which in English is I am. And we're talking about this duality, and it's like, well, I am all the negative and I am all the positive, right? Those are just two magnetic forces and poles of duality that kind of pull us in different directions. But the I amness of that is your uniqueness. That is your signature, that you came here, your birthright, that you came to create. And one of my recent teachers that I was sitting with was talking about the I am concept and gave me this little prayer. And I wanted to share it with you because I'm feeling called to share it. It goes like this. I am. I am that. I am that I am. I am that. I am I.
Love that.
And so it really just brings you back to the frequency of just I, just you, just the beingness of you. Your uniqueness brings all of that. And that's actually a perfect segue into your unique magical gifts of music. And again, you know, I first encountered you in a breathwork ceremony. I had no idea that you are this beautiful musician and being, and just like your voice is just gorgeous. It transcends dimensions. I feel it on a cellular level. I feel like it changes the way that I feel, and it's a frequency. And so thank you for your gift, and thank you for sharing your gift. And I would love to talk to you about your music and kind of what got you onto the path of music. And, it's clearly a way that you express both emotion and feeling and your vibrancy. And also you recently released some music as well. So I'd love to talk about kind of the records you released. One of the ones that I've been listening to is What That Means. And then the other one I've been listening to is Hallucinogenics. And I was like, yeah, okay, these are jams. And so I would love to chat with you about your music. And also, you recently played at a huge festival, Arcadia, which is just like, oh my gosh, just so, I mean, it's huge. And you play nationally. So I would love to talk to you about your music and your gifts and your uniqueness that you bring to the world. For those of you who don't already know, my husband and I own a coffee company called Gay Head Coffee. And of course, we drink our own coffee every day, and it's some of the most flavorful and inviting coffee, especially with the nostalgia of coming from a can rather than paper or plastic packaging. But I'm biased, so check it out for yourself. If you're interested, head over to the show notes where you will find a link to order your coffee today from gayheadcoffee.com. That's GAYHEADCOFFEE.com. Thank you all for your support. It means the world to us as a small business.
Yeah. I'm so excited about my music right now. I'm like getting in. I've been writing so much the past year, but mainly the past like 6 months. And it's been such a challenge. Like I've been doing this professionally for, like almost 15 years, and like moving in and out of like having other jobs on the side, and then, years where I don't, and then I'm like just doing music full time and back. And so I've been in a place where I've just been doing music full time for the past couple of years, and it's been great, but it's been very challenging, and I go back and forth between, I write a lot of like, I love country music and like Americana sound, and but I also want to make like conscious music, and so it's like music that you could sit with in the middle of the biggest ceremony of your life, and it would bring you, to wherever you need. Or, I want to make music that does, like you said, like, thank you for saying that like touches people on like a cellular level, and there's been all the things that I've been through. It's like, I feel like the only thing that needs to come out of my mouth is something that somehow makes somebody think about God in some way. And even within the more like quote unquote secular styles of songs that I write, I was literally just had a call yesterday with a friend who's also helping me kind of get some things together for this new record that I'm going to be doing. I vacillate back and forth between like, okay, well, do I put out this more like commercially country sounding song, or do I move in that lane, or do I just go with like the conscious lane, and like I'm only going to be playing at ceremonies and yoga retreats and conscious festivals, and it's like every time I feel like I pick one lane or the other, I'm like, but that doesn't feel right. Like I really want to do both. And so it comes into this thing of how I've so compartmentalized my life for so long, of like, or even, with being in Fit for Service this year, it's like, we have this container of like-minded people, and, we're so free to like say the wildest shit that comes to our head when it comes to spirituality, and there's no judgment and just acceptance and love. And then I come home and it's like normal Amanda.
You get into the real world and you can't say shit like that.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa.
Talking about a Merkaba activation with Matisse Stefanos where I was holding balls of light in my hand, like people were like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What is she on, man? And you're like, just breath. It was just breath, I promise.
And a lot of my, people that I'm close with in my life, like they really do understand and like love that I'm, into some fringy type of stuff, because they see the light. They've seen my life change. Right. And so they're just like, hey, maybe not for me, but you go do your thing. And, but it's like something that I feel like I've finally settled into is like, it drives me crazy when I encounter people that are so lost in the woo-woo side of things that it's like there is no potential for a quote unquote normal conversation with people that it's like when I was in the church, like some people would just speak in a way that it was like, if you weren't in the church that they were in, or like if you weren't at IHOP, you would literally have no idea what they were saying. You would have no idea what just came out of their mouth. And like, they're trying to talk to you like it's so normal, but like to anybody outside of that context, it's like slow blinking crickets in the background. But I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's so disconnected. Like, and to live in a way that like, yes, we all want to be as spiritual as we can and like as close to God and like filled with the love of the universe as possible. But like the point is to then bring that into the 3D, like bring that into everyday life. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, what's the point of going off and having these crazy spiritual experiences, or going to Costa Rica and drinking ayahuasca in the jungle and feeling like your whole DNA has changed if you can't come back and sit at a coffee shop and talk to somebody who has never heard of ayahuasca?
Yeah, it's all about those mundane moments and finding the magic in those moments, because that is the integration, and that is actually the ceremony too. It's like
Totally.
the ceremony is not the ceremony, the life is the ceremony. And
Yeah.
so when we go into those little containers and then we come out of those containers, like, no, that's when everything starts. Like,
Yeah.
that's the starting point. You just got to the starting line, and now you get to practice, because it is a practice too.
Absolutely. And so I'm like, I feel so excited about this new record I'm about to make. Like I'm starting it on Thursday, going in to start tracking, and I just literally the synchronicities and the beauty of my life. Like I just spent 2 weeks in Maui and had these miraculous things happen.
Oh my gosh, I knew that, and I forgot to ask you about Maui. How was it?
Oh my gosh, we would have to do a whole podcast on that.
Oh, I love Maui. It's so gorgeous, and just the energy there is magnificent. So
it was
a good time.
It was truly a life-changing trip for me. And then coming back, and I was just like worried about getting back into life, like financially, all these things. It was like the most beautiful 2 weeks of my life coming back, and then I had 3 days of like just stuck in like freeze, because I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like I don't know what to do next. Like I'm all these things that I'm wanting, and then I was like literally thinking about getting a job, like just a different job other than music, because I like knew I wanted to get this record out, but had no idea I was going to make it happen. Like finding a lane for like the type of music that I do want to play hasn't been the easiest thing for it to like come in the form of financial energy for me yet. But I think that I'm in a moment where that's happening. And so I have had a conversation with a couple of beautiful souls who are going to want to help me, kind of make some things happen in a bigger way. And so I'm so excited to make this record, because it's going to be both and, right? Like it's going to be the songs that are like everything that I write from this point. I hope even in hearing it in my voice, even like there's going to be a song about sex on there. It's like feel like a dirty, like, 90s R&B type of like song with like an Americana flair. And it's like, but that moment that I'm writing about was filled with so much like sacred spirituality that it can't not come through in that song, right? And so it's like, to anybody hearing it, they should still be able to feel that. They'll be able to hear it from a place of like, damn, this is a good song, you know, whatever. But then from hearing that, they'll be able to hear in my voice all that vibration, and then they'll be able to click to another track, and then they'll hear me talking about a song about like making clay together and all the spiritual things. And that song I was talking about, you know, that I wrote with ayahuasca, of like, you know, moving on and like shaking hands with your demons and coming back, and other songs that I'm like, you know, working on to put onto it that are like, would love to play in ceremonies and breathwork sessions, and like, and then a couple other songs that are just like raging Americana country songs that could play on the radio, you know, but there's still everything in it. The fabric of my DNA is in every single lyric and every single note in these songs. So it's like, I have to believe that, and because I love them so much, that anyone hearing them is going to feel that vibration through whatever I'm talking about. And if I can't blend my two worlds together, like, what am I even doing? What am I doing? Like, it's something's not working. So I'm so excited to move forward and put this record out and have it be something that could play on country radio and something that could play in the Amazon.
Well, thank you for not picking a lane. Like, thanks for staying in that unique frequency that is you, because you not boxing yourself in is going to expand you so far beyond. And I mean, I truly believe that. And so I can't wait to hear this record. How was playing at Arcadia? What was that like for you?
Oh, it was so good. It was so good.
And for those who don't know, Arcadia is a huge musical, kind of like spiritual and musical venue, where there's speakers, there's performers, there's art, there's ecstatic dance. I mean, there's all the things.
Wild costumes.
Yeah, costumes. Like it's adult playground. So just to set that stage, but yeah, what was that experience like?
It was so beautiful. It was like the first time in a really long time that I got to like play exactly how I really want to. And I mainly focused more, I got to talk, right? Like, I had an hour-long set, and it was just me and my guitar. It was just me and my guitar and
me and my geet.
Yeah. And I got to tell the story. Like, it was like top to bottom of where I started, and then a song, and then another place that got me to, and then the song, and then another place. It felt like a mini version of that show that I want to make. And it was so vulnerable and so raw and so honest. And it was filled with the room was filled with people that I love. You know, there's so many people in Fit for Service that we were in this year, and just the energy of that place of people really that are sitting there and listening, like just hanging on every word. And I play a lot out in like bars and, you know, restaurants and stuff like that for like gigs where nobody's paying attention, you know, or it's just like there's chatter over here, or like they'll like catch one song, they're like, oh, that's great, and then go back to eating a taco, you know. And so it was just to have everyone's undivided attention and to feel so on in the way of like, I felt like powerful, like I had control of the room. I felt like it was the most professional set I'd done in a really long time. And it was just like unlocking like vulnerability and like being as honest as I could, you know. And I had just recently written a song about like somebody that I was like really brave and like expressed feelings for, but like just opening up love to like just to love, you know, and like no expectation of anything past that, and like being really vulnerable with a room full of people that are just simply to hope that it would unlock some vulnerability in them, you know, and just to hope that like hearing that if one of the, you know, 11 or 12 songs that I played in that set left them with some sense of like, man, I feel so much better, or like something feels different, or like I want to sit and I like want to talk to God, or like I want to talk to somebody that I care about, or I want to try loving again, or anything, like then that's all I want to do with my music ever. And so Arcadia was just such a perfect place. I felt like super blessed to play there, and really lucky to be part of the fam. So
Yeah, it's kind of like the vulnerability like breeds more connection, breeds more vulnerability, breeds more even more connection. And you mentioned kind of like playing gigs, it's a little bit different because people aren't necessarily like paying full attention, whereas like that crowd was probably like hanging on your every word. How was it different to be like fully seen in that way? And not only seen, but like non-judgmentally seen from like a perspective of like full gratitude, attention, like because that I know that crew and like I'm sure you could hear a pin drop besides your voice. So how was that to be like fully seen?
yeah, it's beautiful. So my like day job, if you will, I, do like several shows a week at like random places, anywhere you would think of, like, oh, you go into a restaurant and there's someone playing live music. Like that's how I make rent. But then I also have, a couple bands, and then I have an original band that I get to play with, not often. But when we do play, it's like, it's the best, because then it's people either buying a ticket or coming just to see like my actual like Amanda Hughey songs, like my original music. And then I have another all female band that we just started in September called Flat Season, and it's me and four other powerhouse women, and we're starting to write music together. And there's, we all are singers and songwriters, and so it's like when we get together, it's like people are fully focused on what we're doing. And so I have those outlets of feeling like I'm really seen in that place where people are buying a ticket or like coming specifically to listen to my songs. But they're much more further and few between, or further and fewer between. Far, you know what I'm trying to say there.
Farther and fewer, yeah. I don't know what either now. I'm now confused. Yeah, no, I absolutely know what you're saying. And also like congratulations on just like living your dream, like and following your heart and following that track and that thread where it's like, okay, yeah, this feels good, this feels good, this feels good. Okay. And now it will start to like hopefully snowball into something that's where you don't even have to have those thoughts of like, oh, should I get a, quote unquote normal job to sustain, right? So
Yeah, my
really
friend Jason Brown would call it following the nudges, which is something that I've been like, really has just like changed. It's like something that you already knew, but like just that simple phrase to me has opened up so much of just like, every day am I connecting? And then if I'm connecting, how can I open up of like, okay, I'm listening to you. Like I'm really listening. My whole body is connected. Like, what are we going to do today? And like being open for the adventure of the day, every day. And like, it has been truly, truly difficult to stay the course and like just play music. Like it has been very challenging, but there's this, like the starving artist thing is there for a reason, and it's like, I don't claim that anymore. That's not how I'm walking anymore. But it's been really hard, and challenging, and people saying no, and family or other friends just being like, are you okay? How long are you going to play this out? Like, you're not making money, you're not doing this, and I'm just like, I can't do anything else. Like I can't. And even when I've had other bigger jobs, in like my later 20s and early 30s, and like literally like put me in the hospital because I couldn't, like, it was so much, like my anxiety and like so many different things were happening that was just like, saying no to this path for me, it's just never been an option. And so it just comes down to that aspect of like, being so grateful for staying brave. Like, no matter what, in the face of like, probably should not still be doing this given how non-lucrative it has been at times. But like, here I am. And now things are moving in a way that I've always dreamed. And now I'm like having conversations with people that are wanting to back me financially to like make this happen, to make the record that I've always wanted to make, and to move into playing shows and festivals and music in the way that I've always wanted to play, and it's just like the yes and is like finally coming my way. And I know that so much of that had to do with me saying yes back and like getting sober and clearing my spirit, clearing my body, clearing my mind, and like doing all the work to alchemize all the shit that has gone on in my life and that I've been through, and the trauma and the pain. And it's like, man, I just feel like the most intense gratitude and like respect for like the power that I'm about to walk in. And it like feels like such a gift to be given the gifts that I have. And so I just feel really ready for this next season. So
it's so amazing, and it is healing, especially when you're creating music that can live in multiple spaces and can be in healing spaces and can just be really fun, like something that could come on the radio and you can just find joy in listening. If that's the only thing you find, just finding joy and finding, getting in touch with some emotions. You've done it, right? And I'm curious if there was, because we've kind of talked about a lot. We've gone in many different directions. If you could give a message to that little girl, that younger self, that girl that maybe was feeling pain and repressed and didn't know how to hold the darkness of the world yet, what would that message be for that little girl inside you?
You're perfect. We make it. Like, don't give up, like just so many things are going to happen in your life and you're going to see a lot of pain. But like, I promise you it's worth it. Just don't give up. Stay brave. Like, look for every adventure because that lights you on fire. And just be brave enough always to find your own way, because that's the only way, and it's the most beautiful thing. And anything that everybody or anybody will say about how wrong you are, just find the truth for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. This has been a really expanding conversation, and I didn't expect to go down all these rivers, but we did, and it feels really good. And also, it's really good to get to know you on a deeper level. And for those who are listening, where can people find your music? Where are you most active? Can you spell out your Instagram for people? I know you have music on Spotify, so where can people find you, listen to your music, and where are you sharing updates on gigs, things like that?
Yeah, I'm social media wise, I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is just Amanda Hugh, all one word. And then revamping the website, so amandahughey.com will be back up here pretty soon. Spotify, Amazon, YouTube Music, whatever you stream, you can find my stuff, just searching Amanda Hughey. And then pretty active with shows and whatnot on like my music Facebook page, just Amanda Hughey Music, but hopefully everything will be tying into the website here soon. And then be posting shows and all the good stuff, and trying to get that TikTok life going, man. Trying to get that TikTok life going. So
it's a tough life. There's so many platforms.
But most active on Instagram, and I'll be going live on there a lot more often too, and just kind of doing my own little live stream shows and stuff like that. I've been having a lot of fun doing those. It kind of reminds me of COVID times when that's all we could do as musicians. But yeah, it's been really good just to find a different way to connect with people that I'm not with all the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will link all of that in the show notes. So nobody needs to memorize. It will all be linked in the show notes for you guys. So you can easily find Amanda. Thank you so much for being on the Seikird Healing Podcast. I consider music to be so healing in so many different ways. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it changes your body on a molecular level. And so I'm so excited for this new music that you have coming out. And congratulations. And thank you for still being here on this planet with us and surviving all that you've survived and all the trauma and the rebirths that you've had to be a more beautiful version of you in this world. So appreciate you and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you so much for having me.
I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.